seated, and I invite Caleb up to the lectern for the first scripture reading.
I'll be reading John 9, 1 through 3. And as Jesus passed by, he saw a man which was blind from his birth. And his disciples asked him, saying, Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, Neither has this man sinned, nor his parents, that the works of God should be made manifest in him.
I invite Samuel to come forward.
As Hank Zipser is unlikely familiar reading for most of you, just a few comments for context. So Hank Zipser, the world's greatest underachiever, is one of a long line of pulp fiction written for young children and pushed by Scholastic. It's nominally written by Henry Winkler for commercialization, but I think we can more accurately assume Lynn Oliver did most of the lifting there. And it was published in that time in Gabriel's life, that magical time when he grasped plot. He understood characters. He enjoyed reading. And this was his series. This was the series that cemented Gabriel as a lifelong lover of books. So I'm just going to share one passage, and I apologize, it's probably about 4 minutes long, that I'm certain would have drawn Gabriel, several great smiles from Gabriel. This takes place in the second of this series. When he met me at the office door, Principal Love did not look happy. Neither did his mole. Principal Love has this mole on his face that I swear looks like the Statue of Liberty without the torch. Ashley and Frankie disagree. Ashley thinks it looks like a cherry pit. Frankie says it looks like one of those crackers that's shaped like a goldfish. But I say, my opinion goes, since I spent way more time in Principal Love's office than both Frankie and Ashley combined, I've had a whole lot more mole viewing time. I see we meet again, Mr. Zipser, Principal Love said in his big man voice. Even though he's not much taller than I am, Principal Love has a really loud voice. He always sounds like he's on the loudspeaker system, even though he isn't. I followed him into his office. "Sit down, young man," he said, pointing to the chair across from his desk. "You're spending so much time here, I believe that seat is starting to take the shape of your rear end." I laughed. He didn't. "I'll let you know when something funny happens," he said. "Until then, keep your laughter to yourself." He read over the note my teacher sent with me, rubbing his chin as he read. He was dangerously close to touching his mole. I wonder if when he touches it, he screams, "Ick!" I knew I would. "I read here that Miss Adolph asked you to sit down, and you did not," he said. I cleared my throat and tried to speak. Something came out, but it wasn't words. It was mostly air, with a croaking froggy sound mixed in. Principal Love makes you nervous, even if you're trying not to be nervous. "Speak up, young man," he said. I tried again, and a few words came out this time. "I wasn't finished spelling, sir." But your directions were to sit down," he said. "Were they not?" I didn't answer, but everyone here at PS 87 knows that when Leland Love asks a question, he likes to answer it himself. "Yes, they were," he said, proving my point. "I'm going to tell you something, Mr. Zipser, and I want you to carry this thought with you for the rest of your school years. It may be the best single piece of advice you ever get." Wow, I was ready for that. I scooted up on the edge of my chair. Lay it on me, I thought. Principal Love cleared his throat. "Following directions will get you where you need to be, no matter where you are," he said. "If that's the best piece of advice I'll ever get, I hope I never hear the worst." It just so happens that you have caught me in a very good mood, and so I'm going to let you off with a warning. He reached down and loosened one of the Velcro straps on his shoes. "Do you know why I'm in a good mood, Mr. Zipser?" "Because you really, really love your Velcro shoes?" I asked. "That's one reason," he said. "They are so convenient. But the second reason is that today is fish day in the cafeteria, and I'm about to go and enjoy a fine piece of halibut. Just for the halibut, that is." He threw back his head and laughed so loudly it gave me the creeps. "Something funny just happened. You may laugh now, Mr. Zipser."
My comments will be really quite brief, as I realized in preparation it would be very difficult for me to write about Gabriel's life, and even harder to try and speak it. So, life is unfair. We all know it. We all think it. Sometimes we even say it. Often we might say it as as a lighthearted joke. For example, if I spilt some jam on my pants and I'm feeling particularly smart about it, I may exclaim how woefully unfair it all is, how I've been uniquely inflicted with the curse of messy pants, and how few others could possibly imagine what it's like to be me in this moment. As if jam single-handedly took down the utopian ideal of absolute equality. Sometimes we say life isn't fair when we are dead serious. In the midst of some carefully crafted commentary about the history of injustice or discrimination, socioeconomic disparity. We tend to quickly move the discussion back towards the hope of restoring future justice for posterity, or towards trying. We rarely mention instances of patently irreconcilable states of unfairness. Perhaps because they are ethically complicated. Perhaps because they are sad. Perhaps because irreconcilable unfairness is just that, irreconcilable. What's to gain by even speaking of it? I find all of these arguments quite compelling, so I won't dwell on the topic. All I will say is that Gabriel, perhaps more than most, was well aware that life is unfair. That's all.
Sonnet number 19, On His Blindness, by John Milton. When I consider how my light is spent, or half my days in this dark world and wide, and that one talent which is death to hide, lodged with me useless, though my soul more bent to serve wherewith my Maker, and present my true account, lest he returning chide, doth God exact day labor, light denied? I fondly ask. But patience, to prevent that murmur, soon replies, God doth not need either man's work or his own gifts. Who best bear his mild yoke, they serve him best. His state is kingly. Thousands at his bidding speed, and post or land and ocean without rest. They also serve only who stand and wait.
A Prayer for My Son by William Butler Yeats. Bid a strong ghost stand at the head, that my Michael may sleep sound, nor cry, nor turn in the bed, till his morning meal come round, and may departing twilight keep all dread afar, till morning's back, that his mother may not lack her fill of sleep. Bid the ghost have sword in fist. Some there are, for I now avow such devilish things exist, who have planned his murder, for they know of some most haughty deed or thought that waits upon his future days, and would through hatred of the bays bring that to naught. Though you can fashion everything from nothing every day, and teach the morning stars to sing, you have lacked articulate speech to tell your simplest want, and known, wailing upon a woman's knee, all of that worst ignominy of flesh and bone. And when through all the town there ran the servants of your enemy, a woman and a man, unless the holy writings lie, hurried through the smooth and rough, through the fertile and waste, protecting till the danger passed with human love.
If you have an idle moment sometime, grab my youngest son, Caleb, who's in the front row here, and talk to him about the maladaptation of panda bears. He'll tell you that they're an evolutionary mistake. They're dependent on monoculture, bamboo shoots, that males and females don't cohabitate. In fact, females have extensive territory from which they drive the men. Excuse me, boys. Fertilization is then surprisingly rare, and if fertilization occurs, the baby daddy, well, he just kind of moves on to the next mountain range. But here's the kicker. The baby mama cannot tolerate her infant's cries. Now, once again, this is what Caleb tells me. The mother's hearing the cries of the baby, the mother flees. Pandas, he will tell you, richly deserve their impending extinction. Is any of this true? I don't know. Ask Caleb, maybe he'll convince you that it is. Gabriel was our own baby panda. And, objectively viewed, he richly deserved extinction. He was, by all accounts, a normally developing, zygote and fetus. But as, many of you know, the circumstances of his birth were, shall we say, traumatic. I rushed Chantal to the hospital. He was cut out very quickly. Chantal lost a lot of blood. She almost died. Gabriel was taken to the neonatal care unit. In fact, I'm not even sure he made it that far. And I was told to, call the handy priest, say last rites or, whatever my preference was. I called my friend, Rex, and we prayed over him. More about that later. Gabriel was stabilized with drugs, lots of them, and he was in the intensive care unit for 3 weeks. Now, he was really very heavily medicated to the extent that he was just not terribly responsive. We held him a lot, or better said, Chantal held him a lot. I was in denial. And he was sent home without diagnosis, without support. You know, this was inner city Chicago, after all, a really horrible place to be born. Just ask Barrett, who was born there too. The next year really was, you know, I hear this from my clients all the time. You know, my life was a living hell, yada, yada, yada. You know, maybe I'm being really self-centered here. Our life really was, or Chantal's life was. For a year's time, Gabriel would sleep for no more than 45 minutes. His suck was very weak. He couldn't nurse. Even bottle feedings took a lot of time. We couldn't hire people to help us, you know, even we didn't have a lot of money back then, and even to the extent that, you know, people were willing to volunteer, you know, they couldn't do it. I mean, this is damn hard work. Just to tell you how we sort of survived this first year. Gabriel was born in May. We moved out of our apartment in Chicago in August because we didn't have housing until September. We lived with my parents in their basement in their home in McLean, Virginia. Then we moved to Hanover, and we had this big overstuffed sofa. And we would sit in the left corner of it, where we could place our left elbows on the overstuffed chair, hold his head, cradle his head with this. Actually, how did we do this? I would reach my arm behind the small of his back, hold his left hip, which would support his head and his back, and then I take the bottle and stick it in his mouth. Now, we'd do this. We'd tag team for hours. You know, Chantal would do it for a couple of hours. I would do it for a couple of hours, and we did this for most of that first year. To give you an idea of the nature of the task, what I worked hard to do was to find a way to support the bottle with my chin. So I'd hold him with my left hand here. The bottle would go in his mouth. I'd put the chin right up against the end of the bottle, and then I'd grab a news magazine, and I would read it like this. And I could place it down, flip the page, go like this. Now, I subscribed to many political journals at the time. The one that one journal I would not read now, but I really liked it back then. It was First Things. It was a Catholic political journal published by an ex-Protestant, a priest who had gone over to the dark side. Sorry, I didn't say that. But it was a wonderful journal, and I loved reading it. But it was a broadsheet. I mean, there was just no way I could hold that thing with one hand. So regretfully, we allowed our subscription to lapse. Yeah, it was hard. We gave him a nickname, and it was not Gabe, okay? It was Bubba. And you ask why we would give him the name Bubba. This was not after William J. Clinton, but it was rather after Beelzebub. My father can't tell the difference, but back when he was a Republican. But we called him Bubba, and he was a screamer. It was really, really hard. But you know, with time, things did get better, and it was incremental. I mentioned that we spent a month with my parents in McLean. Gabriel was June, July, August. He was in his 4th month there. Most babies learn to smile or start smiling when they're a little bit younger. I remember Barrett's first smile. He was 6 weeks old. That was amazing. You know, that's why we, unlike pandas, are not extinct. More about that later. I remember, Chantal and I remember, one of the strongest memories of his life was being in the basement on this really horribly upholstered sofa. I hope my parents have either gotten rid of it or found a way to reupholster it. But we were holding Gabriel, and just fleetingly he smiled. And there was his salvation. A year later, in the spring of 1998, the doctors finally said, he's not going to survive unless we install something called a gastrointestinal tube, basically a way of sending food straight to his stomach. And that was installed. It was hard too, because we didn't, once again, instructions were not included when he got sent back from the hospital. And we were so frustrated, he spent a year in a holding room for disabled children. He came back, and the instructions were still not included, and he barfed a lot because we'd overfeed him. So this is the only time we actually called him Gabe was when he started barfing, and he was then known as, Barfin' Gabe. And as you probably saw from the photographs that were displayed here before the service and in Emerson Chapel and downstairs in Hardy Hall, a lot of the photographs, we had difficulty finding photographs from his teenage years. We had plenty of them when he was young. And you know why? Because he was so darn cute. He would smile. When Barrett was little, he spent, whenever he could, he spent time with his cousin, Stuart. Stuart, you here? Stand up. Barrett, stand up. Okay, take a very careful look at their faces. Okay. Who's more handsome? You don't need to say, just good, okay. Who's smarter? You can sit down now. Okay. Now, I'm going to ask my mother to stand up. Grammy? Okay. Okay. This is my mother, Cynthia Clark. You can sit down now. One of the lines that she famously said was, "Barrett's so cute and Stuart's so smart." Hey, Stuart, what college did you graduate from? You don't need to answer that one either. My mom's often right, but here she was really wrong, okay? I'm not saying that Stuart's a dullard or anything like that. I'm not even saying that he's not too handsome. Emma, you can stay seated. I'm not going to ask you to offer your opinion about either his intelligence or his beauty. But Grammy was wrong here. Barrett wasn't cute and Stuart wasn't smart. Barrett was cute because he was smart. Barrett, as any child knows, learned what people wanted and gave it to them because he instinctively knew, or maybe just because he would spend enough time around his mother, who actually is really, really smart, and learned that, this is what you need to do to get people to pay attention to. Infants require so much care. They're so amazingly needy. And Barrett gave it to his mother, gave it to his grandmother, gave it to me. But here's the thing. Gabriel's pretty darn smart, too. And one of the things we recognized in that moment when we were in the basement of my parents' home was that Gabriel could figure out how to get from people what he needed. As you know, you saw these pictures, you knew Gabriel. You point a camera at him and bingo, there's this big smile on his face. As you might recall, his last wheelchair was brown, black, and olive. He didn't just wear camo. He was one. Gabriel was no panda. If you're here, you knew that. You pointed your camera at Gabriel, and he smiled back. When I was preparing these notes, I was thinking, okay, now here's where I list all of the things that people did for him over the course of his life. And, I started that list, and, I'd go on forever. Every single one of you did something for him. And he gave back. The result for Gabriel undeniably was a very rich life. It was short, but it was rich. Let me go back to Gabriel's near death in the hospital. When I called Rex, and he joined me there, I prayed over Gabriel, and the thing I remember most strongly from my prayer was that I asked God that Gabriel might have life, and that it would be a blessing to him and to his family and all those who would know him. His life was all of those things. I'm probably also not telling you something that you don't know when I tell you that many people chose not to see Gabriel. They didn't bother picking up that camera and pointing it. They would focus on the background. They'd see a wheelchair and nothing more. You might have seen this personally in interacting with Gabriel, the person who ignored him, the person who would never fully understand that he was like really any other teenage boy. His teachers programmed jokes into his squawk box. I've got this strong suspicion that the jokes that he wanted to put there were a lot nastier than the ones that his teachers allowed to be. There's a lot of maternal censorship going on there. No slight here, but Gabriel really enjoyed his male caregivers because, they kind of understood what a teenage boy was interested in. It's a literary and cultural leitmotif that the great and the good show up in disguise to test the ability of those around them to perceive the character of the appearing soul. Every culture's got it. I'm going to mention a couple of ones that I know about. One of my favorite books, if you want to call it that, is Homer's Odyssey. A repeated theme throughout this, I won't bore you with all the details, is about how somebody shows up and the person around him either gets it or doesn't get it, doesn't see the reality. As there are people hiding inside the Trojan horse, people around them are talking, and some of them got the sense that there's something inside of it, and others are utterly clueless. Story ends with Odysseus appearing back at his home, and guess who recognizes him? Well, he's dressed in disguise. He's dressed as a beggar because there are dangers at his house. He doesn't want to be recognized. But the person who recognizes him, of course, you got it, is the swineherd, the guy who's taking care of his pigs, the steward. He treats him well, recognizes him, provides him support as he then goes and makes his assault on his house. Think about Abraham, who received guests, not really knowing who they were. The text is kind of ambiguous. Could be either God or angels. But Abraham showed them hospitality that they didn't get in Sodom. Let's talk, since we're inside of a Christian church, maybe we could talk about Christ for a little bit. Where does one begin? Let's think back to perhaps the Nativity, where God takes human form. Think about it, okay, as Yeats did. Jesus came as a baby. What do babies do? They cry, they scream, they suck. They can't talk. And we have in the story of the Gospels that Herod was out to kill him. And he was saved by people of no moment who happened to have been chosen by God to care for his son. One of the reasons why we asked the Congregational Church whether we could hold Gabriel's funeral here was because this sanctuary was a very special place for Gabriel. Every Sunday, no, I'm sorry, not every Sunday, every year, that's not every Sunday. In the spring, the church would host Scout Sunday, where the Scouts would be recognized. The Scouts would pay thanks to the church for hosting, for supporting the troop, and the church would give the Scouts the recognition. And Gabriel was always there, right there where Caleb is, watching, being very happy, very eager to be part of the Boy Scout troop and to pay his respects to this congregation for supporting the troop. But what was really special to Gabriel was coming here on Christmas Eve. He absolutely loved the candlelight service. Now, we wouldn't come in through the front because we couldn't. So we'd come in here, and as we rolled up the ramp, we were offered a candle with wax, and also an electric candle, because somebody was always concerned that he might burn down the place. Now, he was a firebug. He really enjoyed the bonfires that we have out in our pasture every couple of months. But I would take it because that was a polite thing to do. I was going to say, Gabriel doesn't want your stupid electric candle. He wants the real deal. And so we take the wax candle, and then at the end of the service, Silent Night would be sung, and the light would be passed from person to person, and he would hold that candle. Now, I had to work really hard to hold his candle, to hold his hand so that the wax would not fall on him, so the fire wouldn't catch on his sweater or whatever he was wearing. And it was, as I said, it was hard work for him and me, him containing his excitement, me containing the Gabriel. But this was always, for me, every year, a very moving experience because it was an unmistakable reminder that God loved me and my wife enough to entrust his son to our care. Chantel and I would like to offer our deepest thanks to all of you for helping this woman and this man as we hurried through the smooth and the rough, through the fertile and the waste, to protect with human love our son.
We're going to sing a hymn. Come, come, ye saints, and I invite you to stand in body or spirit as you are able. Seated. Barrett, I want to thank you for your honest reflections. You reminded me of something that I heard a long time ago. I met a man who said that he was standing next to John F. Kennedy when a little boy asked him, "Why are you a war hero?" And John Kennedy said, "Because life isn't fair." Now, my remarks are going to be quite positive, maybe because I'm a minister, but also because I'm reflecting the things that people have said to me, because I did not know Gabe personally. But it is customary for the minister to tie things up with a spiritual message. And to reflect in that manner. So the theme that you may find throughout this is a theme of community. Right, Samuel? Let me begin by saying that we often think of our body as a vehicle for our spirit. That's a theological statement. The body is a vehicle for the spirit. And it's common to say when a person passes into blessed memory that now their spirit is free. You've heard that at many funerals. It is no longer restricted by their body. Now, I hope you understand this because it's hard to express. There's a sense in which Gabriel's spirit was never restricted. There's a sense in which Gabriel's spirit was always out here. Because of his limitations, He was always crossing boundaries. His Spirit was always crossing boundaries. So it's a little bit different to simply say, now his Spirit is free. His Spirit was also always bigger than his body. And I wonder if we could look at each other the same way we looked at Gabriel and the way Gabriel looked at us, crossing that boundary, attempting to see the Spirit inside each of us. When it's sometimes very difficult for us to express too, just as it was for Gabriel. It was his interest in being with other people that allowed his Spirit to stretch beyond his body. Because of his physical but not mental challenges, he had to reach out all the time. So in a sense, his Spirit was always free. I'm told that if you got to know Gabriel, he generously rewarded you. One of the greatest rewards anyone can receive is to be recognized and known. The gift that people appreciate most is one that shows you know their interests, you know them. And Gabe would recognize and know you, even beaming brightly when he saw you, if you would recognize him. I'm told that Gabriel loved being in community with other people. He thrived in school, at Crotchet Mountain, in Boy Scouts, and in sports. Title IX led to unified sports, and Gabriel enjoyed basketball and soccer. Sports combined his love for being with people and for moving fast. Gabriel loved speed. Gabe would be known wherever he went. Everyone knew Gabriel. He even enjoyed just going to the library and the grocery store, to school events and town festivals, as we just heard, to Boy Scout Sundays and Christmas Eve services at this church. At the transfer station, he had a job educating people about recycling with a flyer he helped develop. Wherever he went, people would know him and would greet him. If you think about it, Hollis was an idyllic community for Gabriel to grow up in, large enough for there to be a lot of community activity, and small enough so that most people would know him. Gabriel taught us something about this community. Since people knew Gabe, they now understand that when you see someone in a wheelchair who is not talking the way you do, that doesn't mean that they have a cognitive limitation. It was hard to know Gabriel's complex thoughts, but you could be sure he had full mental acuity and he could make his desires absolutely clear. You could always tell if Gabriel did or did not like something, and if he found something to be funny. It was usually pretty silly, but boy, was it fun to laugh with him. Boy Scout camp, if you think about it, was perfect for Gabriel. He loved being in water and sitting around the campfire in community with other people. He reminds us all to relish the simple pleasures in life. Life was a serious challenge for Gabriel, and Lord knows life is serious for all of us. But we can still take the time to enjoy each other's company and maybe share a knock-knock joke or two. We can remember to be passionate yet patient, to be jolly, kind, and forgiving. We can remember to help everyone get to the top of the mountain. As Samuel Burgess told me, the community grew together around Gabriel. Gabriel provided a service. The example of community for Gabriel was set by his family, his wonderful family. Gabriel's family knew his inner spirit intimately, and those who took the time to get to know Gabe also saw it. Gabe had a family and friends that were described by others as attentive and caring. Gabe taught those who cared for him to be more caring and understanding. You, Gabe's family, will continue to be attentive and caring and understanding as the spirit of Gabriel lives on in you. And so may we all be more attentive and caring to each other and to all of God's children around us. Yes, it's the preacher's turn. Perhaps a person's life can have more impact in the world in a short time if it is rich and passionate instead of a long life that is just long. Ben Jonson was a British playwright and poet who was a contemporary and friend of Shakespeare. As the story goes, when a friend of Ben Jonson's lost a child, Ben wrote the following poem. It was written in the early 1600s, and I first read it 50 years ago and have remembered it ever since. It is titled The Noble Nature. It is not growing like a tree in bulk, doth make man better be, or standing long an oak 300 year, to fall at log at last, dry, bald, and sere. A lily of the day is fairer far in May. Although it fall and die that night, it was the plant and flower of light. In small proportions we just beauties see, and in short measures life may perfect be. In a sense, Gabe's life was perfect. And let us now pray a prayer of thanksgiving. Please join me in a spirit of prayer. O God, our strength and our Redeemer, giver of life and conqueror of death, we praise you with humble hearts. We praise you for your steadfast love for Gabriel Clark all the days of his earthly life. We thank you for all that he was to those who loved him, and for his faithfulness to his family, friends, and community. We thank you that for Gabriel, any sorrow has ended, and that he has entered the home where all your people gather in peace. Amen. Do not worry about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, beloved, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, and if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. Keep on doing the things that you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, and the God of peace will be with you. Amen.